Next on Rugby Wrap-Up, Bryan Ray, Dan Power, and Matt McCarthy with Major League Rugby analysis, highlights, and opinion that you don't want to miss. Rugby Wrap-Up brought to you in part by The Pig and Whistle, the world's best rugby pub. The Murphy Kennedy Group, founded with the idea that construction can be done better. And Lean and Limber, stretching your way to a healthier lifestyle. Hello again, everybody, and welcome back to Rugby Wrap-Up. Thank you for joining us once again and joining my colleagues, Mr. Bryan Ray and Mr. Dan Power. Bryan, let's get right to it, right? We got NOLA going into San Diego. Who the hell is this San Diego team?
Who the hell is either team after what we just watched? I was flabbergasted by that game. There's two sides of this coin. Number one, San Diego's defense was excellent. Number two, NOLA's offense was poor. You could see Holden Youngert frustrated, trying to waving guys around the corner. He's got a one-off runner, no support. There was just no urgency to move the ball quickly from the ruck. It was too slow. It gave San Diego more time to set up. But hey, San Diego tackled like their lives depended on it, and they fully deserved that win. Best game we've seen from them all year. So kudos to them. That's why I'm hanging out in sunny downtown Chula Vista here. Credit to San Diego. I'm pleased that they got the win. They got a week off now, and looking forward to see what they can do in the second half.
Dan, are San Diego who we thought they are?
Oh, look at you, Dennis Green, start smashing the desk here. Mate, how about just statistics in the MLR this year just mean absolutely nothing? You can control territory possession. It's like you'll lose by 40 points. It's crazy. Like NOLA had the statistical advantage in this game, yet they weren't even close. Didn't even look like winning. But San Diego with Joe Peterson, it's like, you've got the Heath Ledger Joker when he's playing. And when he's not playing, it's like the Jared Leto Joker, who was terrible. Like that's San Diego. Same character, totally different when one guy plays and when he doesn't.
Bryan, we had Ethan McVeigh making his first start in Major League Rugby, and what a start it was.
Yeah, how about that? He wasn't even on the team a couple weeks ago, already starting and gets to play with Joe Peterson at that. So I'm sure he enjoyed himself. I've got to say, he looked pretty sharp out there. I like what I saw. So, that question that we had, are there any American scrum halves floating around? Apparently there is, and he looks pretty good.
Hey, sir, aren't you Ethan McVeigh, the Mark Lone Medal Award winner?
I am, in fact, Ethan McVeigh, the Mark Lone Medal Award winner.
And isn't this the award for the High School Player of the Year as issued by Queensland University?
Yes, it is, in fact.
It's a program of synergy between USA Rugby and the Australian Rugby Union?
Yes.
And you are a scrum half?
I am, in fact, a scrum half.
Cecil Africa, though, looked a lot lighter and is a little bit more pep in his step with Joe Peterson back then.
Yeah, well, you take away the responsibility of being a creator, for Cecil Africa and just let him run the ball. He's a natural ball runner. It's what he's best at. As soon as you just let him do that, put a fence around the stuff that he's not great at, he's a significantly better player. We saw the same performance a few weeks ago, and now he gets to go back to that. So hopefully they start to come healthy here. I was just kind of running my eye over the Western table. They're not out of it, like by a long shot. You got Austin and Utah kind of neck and neck in that second place, but they're 5-6 points in arrears, but they've got a run of games here that are winnable games. And if they can play like they did in the weekend, Matt, the West is now wide open again.
The Wild West, Bryan. And speaking of the Wild West, your Toronto Arrows went into Houston.
It's a good win. It was 9 games in a row they've been playing, and it looked like it. I mean, some of the mistakes they were making that first half, you could tell they were just tired, just making bad passes, dropping the ball, that kind of thing. But they pulled it out. It was a gutsy win for them. They didn't get the 5 points, but they got the 4. They needed at least a W out of that one. They spent the whole first half in Houston's end. Some kudos to Houston, certainly, for defending that well. But, I think an Arrows team that was really firing would have had the bonus points sewed up by then. They didn't quite, but they're going to enjoy their week off, I think, kick their feet up, relax a bit, and get recharged for this home stretch run in this second half. And they're still in it. They're not out at yet. We just mentioned San Diego, but the Arrows, if they can put in a good run here with 5 home games in the last 7, I think they'll do okay.
I think Chris Silverthorne, the Arrows and co will look back on this win as, winning ugly. Everyone kind of has their own terminology, but winning those games where you're under a lot of pressure, the other team's defending well, they'll look back on that quite kindly, I think, in a few weeks. It was a tough game. Well, you were there, Matt. Like, I've heard just the physicality. It came across on the screen. It was very, very physical. I think both sides are going to be hurting.
And that was just me and Grant Cole.
Yeah, it was just you and Grant Cole. just in person. It was great. I'm jealous. I was so jealous.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it was that stadium. I hadn't been to it. Unbelievable. You'd think you're in the nicest part of Europe in a state-of-the-art rugby stadium, and it's Houston. It's America, baby. America. Cecil Garber never stops working. Final play of the game, as a matter of fact. His team is out of it, but Godfrey chases it down with a good kick chase. Garber blocks it, picks up the charged kick in the try zone. So they don't quit. They're still plugging away. They got a great stadium, a great organization. Next one up, New York went into Austin, and this was as physical as it gets, and a 16-9 final, Dan.
This looked like a really tough game. New York looked like a team, and I think we all three of us mentioned it on the show last week. They were just mentally drained from the LA game, and Austin's a handful. Like, they're tough, they're physical, and that's probably not what New York wanted. If that was an open, fast game, New York probably would have enjoyed it a bit more, but because they'd just gone through that tough slog with LA, another grind was probably a bit too much for them. A couple of chances from the moments that I saw that probably went begging for New York, but Austin just tough and gritty at home. Good win for the Gilgronis, gets them back into second place.
Didn't help losing Dan Hollinshead, Brian.
Yeah, that was a key departure at halftime. He banged up his shoulder there. You could see he was in some discomfort, so that's unfortunate. Certainly taking nothing away from Harry Bennett, but I'm not sure if Dan was in there anyways, that it would have made too much of a difference the way that game was going. As they say in the fight world, styles make fights, and this was just two teams that were just throwing hammer and tongs at each other all game. New York maybe let themselves down a little bit with their referee management. They got warned twice for back chat just in the first half, and you could tell that, Mr. Anselmi was losing his patience with them. So that's something they're going to have to discuss with themselves. And that's probably just, from being frustrated from the flight and putting it all out against LA the week before and then struggling against what they might have perceived as a lesser side in Austin. But certainly no, they're Austin were up for that when they played hard and they got the W that they deserved.
Dan, you were the only. I got to go back to when they were a laughing stock. You were the one to get on the bandwagon. You are the reason they've turned this thing around, Dan. You
picked up the phone. I said, Gilly, got something special going on down here. I just need a couple of million. And he's like, Dan, everything you touch turns to gold. We kind of represented the color wheel gold to burnt orange. I said gold. He went, we're going burnt orange. But yeah, thanks, Matt. It's a great time to be a Gilgroniac, brother.
It certainly is. It certainly is. And then we've got New England going into Atlanta, and Atlanta is a team that's confounded me. I keep underestimating them, Brian.
Well, I don't wish to, harp on this too much, but I did pick Atlanta last week, so I'll take a little bit of credit for that. And the guy, I thought
it's got an A on it.
The guy I thought it would light it up, Adrian Carlos, ends up playing fly half, and kicks the ball all game. Scott Lawrence obviously saw something that he thought that they could win, and they pounded the ball downfield all game. It threw New England off. They couldn't play their open style. The one try, Harry Barlow, that score that try that he got was the best attacking motion of the whole game. But it was just, they wore them down, over and over, kicked it downfield and just played hard defense. And then there were two key changes in that final quarter. They brought in Manasa Saulo, came into the ATL front row and just wrecked shop in the scrum. It was over at that point. And Vili Toluta, who came on at hooker for New England, and he's doing fine in the loose, but his throwing just isn't there yet. And you can see it at the line out, unfortunately. And that last quarter they just slipped away. ATL, that's a tactical victory, I think, for Scott Lawrence.
And also, what was it, 1918?
Yeah, 1918 up to the hour.
And the two yellow cards for New England. New England doesn't feel comfortable unless they're playing with like five guys in the sin bin.
That conference is just
it ain't tennis.
It's hypertension for the entire fan base. I mean, there should be some statistics on heart disease on the East Coast fan base after this because of how close these go. Well, Atlanta's in first place now. Like 3 weeks ago, Matt. They were in last place. It's like I just can't keep my head wrapped around this. But Yeah, they looked really strong. Carlos moving him from 15 to 10, I think it's pretty interchangeable. But yeah, Brian, when they kind of let him run a little bit more, man, that like adds a whole new wrinkle into that ATL side. So great defense. We know that about Atlanta. They've always had a really strong defensive system, but now they've got a little spark in their attack as well. They're looking good down the stretch here.
Utah going into LA. And, the score is 11-point margin of victory, Dan. But one thing that we're seeing about Utah under Sean Pittman, they don't quit. They do not quit. And, the ending with them scoring and Teo drop kicking the conversion just for good measure, that was pretty cool.
It was awesome. I mean, first drop kick ever in SoFi Stadium. There you go. There's a lot of firsts, wasn't there, that night? But LA get back, after last week against New York, they come back. They look great. But I thought Utah, if they would have executed at some key moments a little bit better, this match is actually really close coming down to the wire. I don't think Utah is that far off LA. Yeah. If they run into each other again out in Utah, the game could be really tight, especially Pittman and Davies go away, watch the film, and kind of pick up those moments, say, hey, we just a couple of percenters here, there, fix this, tighten this up. We're in this game. But LA looked good again, getting close to full strength. Great to see Billy Meeks back. What a difference he makes to that back line. He is, I know we talk a lot about Adam Ashley Cooper and Matt Giteau, and they deserve all the credit. I mean, phenomenal players. Their career speaks volumes. But Billy Meeks is a great signing.
That kid Giteau back.
Yep, that made a big difference too. But I really like Meeks. I got a lot of time for Meeks. Like if you put the GM cap on and I was starting a team somewhere else, he'd be a guy I'd actually be really interested in signing.
That was a pretty good effort from Utah, considering I think a lot of people would have, especially after, LA scored, 2 minutes into the game. I think a lot of people went, oh, here we go again. So, absolutely credit to Utah for sticking in that one throughout the whole game. I think you're right. It was probably a little bit closer than the score reflected, which is a good sign, not only for Utah, but also the competitiveness as a whole. Now that New York has taken that, undefeated shine off LA, all of a sudden everyone else kind of thinks, well, hey, maybe these guys are mortal. Maybe we can pick our game up a little bit here.
Seattle, they went into D.C.
Both sides at the bottom of the table, and I think both probably feel as though they should be doing better than what they are. The loss of Matt Turner probably sent Seattle off here. I felt like they were probably the better team. Through that 50 minutes when Turner got hurt, and then when he went off, they just kind of lost everything. It was just an Old Glory kind of knuckled down and got it done in the end. Seattle will be upset. They're looking better every week, which is one of the positives that fans can take away. Is they look a lot better every week, and they're still out there competing every single week. But Old Glory, this could be like I said with that Toronto game. They could look back at like an ugly win here. I mean, this kept us in touch, and who knows what happens from here for them.
This is a game I didn't think Old Glory should have won. I don't think they played particularly well. I think in that second half, they were really just hanging on, by the skin of their teeth. Seattle kept putting the pressure on, but just a few handling errors here and there, just didn't get a couple things right. And that knock-on effect, you lose Turner, but also JP Smith moves out of scrum half. He was looking pretty good there, and no problems with Devereaux Ferris, but that's a big change when you're making a scrum half change that early in the game, and it's unexpected. So that really did throw them off, and that's unfortunate because I really thought Seattle was the better team in this one. They just couldn't finish in this game.
Yep. And credit to Seattle for battling on the road after that long road trip. But, guys, we'll be right back after this with previews of next week's matches. Don't go away.
If you're in New York City and want to watch some great rugby, have some great food, and some great times, go to the world's best rugby pub, the Pig and Whistle on West 36th Street.
I've been blind since I was 4. And I've never seen a beer commercial or a beer label. None of that stuff influences me. I drink beer because of the taste. And my beer is Pabst Blue Ribbon. It has the taste and the flavor.
What do you think's on the label?
I think there's a naked woman riding on a unicorn, jumping over fire. Oh, that's good beer.
are back. Mr. Bryan Ray, Mr. Dan Power, Matt McCarthy. Guys, we got some good matches coming up. Toronto, the Toronto Atlantans, Brian's team, are off this week. They're going to get some rest, much needed, well-deserved rest. And also we had that Gilgronis versus Giltinis thing, the Gilchrist Cup, on Wednesday. So those teams aren't playing this weekend. But we do have Utah going into NOLA, and two teams coming off different results in a mental state, Dan.
Yeah, if I'm coaching these two sides, I'd rather be coaching Utah in this scenario because they took, I think, more positives out of their loss than I think NOLA just got absolutely obliterated down there in San Diego. This one's down in the gold mine, so a little bit of advantage there to NOLA Gold. But I think Utah is going to bounce back. I actually really, outside of that 3-game skid there where they went through, where it was kind of, and they've turned that around so well. I think Utah is a really good program. It's a really good culture there. Mike Teo has taken a leadership role within that team. I like what they're doing. I like Sean Pittman. I like Sean Davies. I like Brendan Sparks. I like that organization. I think they're going to shock some people down the stretch here and get themselves back into the playoffs. So I'll go Utah.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Dan on this one. We're looking at teams trying to figure out what's going on from week to week. 2 weeks ago, I would have said NOLA would be the favorites at home in this game. But after what we saw last week, Utah looked the better side. NOLA looked totally out of sorts. Totally, I don't know what happened to them. So I'm going to have to go with the Warriors on the road in New Orleans.
Yeah, we've got games that define teams. We had Austin going up to New England. We pinpointed that one. You've got Atlanta making that trip into Seattle this weekend. And this is another one. NOLA, after crap in the bed last week in San Diego, how they bounce back. This is a pivotal match in the East, but it's also a pivotal match for the league. Next one up, DC going into Houston.
DC have to win this. Like the East Coast, they're still in. I think Houston may, at this point, be too far back. I think they'd have to run the table to get into the finals in the West, and you just don't like the chance. I think they've actually got a run of games coming up similar to what Toronto have just come through, and Brian and the Arrows fans can attest. That's a tough run to go through, especially when everyone's battle tested in the season. So I just think this DC have more to lose, so they'll win.
This is a tough one to call. DC, if you're looking at who needs to win this more, yeah, you have to go with Old Glory. But, I really wasn't impressed with them. And this is a shorter turnaround. They got 1 day less to recover. They played on Sunday, right? So, what? I like Houston's chances at home. They didn't get any points against the Arrows until the end of one penalty and then the try at the end. But, I think they'll feel a little bit better. They maybe just the way they stuck in the game with the Arrows, I think they'll maybe feel a little better, and they weren't traveling during the week. So, I'm going to go with Houston at home against Old Glory.
This is where it's one of those where, Houston struggled to score points last weekend against Toronto because they were playing a lot of defense. Maybe they're not playing a lot of defense in this one. Maybe they score a bushel of points. Who knows? But I got to go like Dan with the team that's still alive. I'm going with Old Glory in this one. New England at New York, the battle of the Eastern Conference. This one's tough to figure, too. They're both coming off road trips, and New York had that physical battle, and we don't know who's going to be available just yet. Is Hollinshead out? Is he in? Nick Savetta went out in that match. So this is a tough one to figure, Brian.
This is a tough. These are all tough, and they're all bigger as we move towards the end of the season.
Yeah.
Every game just has more weight to it. This is I'm leaning towards New York, but I just feel like New England are going to be really disappointed in themselves with that game against Atlanta, and I think they're going to kind of pick up their socks. So this is going to be a tough game. I'm going to go with New York, but I think it's one of those New York by 3 kind of things. Like I think New England certainly has a chance to win this, but both teams are going to be frustrated with their performances. And I just can't see New York at home accepting that kind of a defeat that they did in Austin.
Yeah, and Jersey City is a tough place to play. Dan, Poland was limping around after he scored his try for New England. And could that be a factor here?
Yeah, so I think even to Brian's point, Poland, you start looking at key players and injuries around this time of the year, which is inevitable. It's going to affect the makeup of these rosters and therefore the performance. But just excited for another chapter, like the great American sporting history behind these two cities. It runs so deep, and I really hope both teams, from ownership down to the very bottom person in the organization, embrace it and really add, write their own chapter, just fresh page, and say, New York hates Boston, Boston hates New York. Let's not, leave pleasantries aside here and rip in.
It's not true.
It is. Rugby United, Marty Veal, Ryan Martin. What's going on this week? Is someone deflating someone else's footballs this week? Who knows?
And your pick is?
I'm doing this game, so I'm not picking anyone. I'm on the fence because I just love rugby.
Like you're not on camera.
No, because you're recording me and you'll get me. And I'll walk in and Marty Veal will be like, "Oh, hey, bro, I need to talk to you for a second about your puck." And I'll be like, "No," and then run away.
That's a pretty good Marty Veal right there, or anybody from New Zealand for that matter. But his pick is New England, ladies and gentlemen. He is picking the Free Jacks. He texted me that just now. I'm going to go with New York because I am unabashedly a homer. The last match, Atlanta going into Seattle, right? This is that big road trip that we were talking about, Brian.
Yeah, and that's the thing that's kind of holding me back from resoundingly picking ATL. I mean, I'm still picking Atlanta. I think they're just looking where the two teams are at the moment. Atlanta's on a roll. They have actually an extra day's rest before they make that trip, but they still got to make the trip, and that's a long trip. So, this is a real testing match for ATL. See what they're really made of. I'm still picking them, but certainly not counting Seattle out by any means. They can, and on that field, it's a smaller field, so not as much room for ATL to run around too. So it's going to be another tactical decision from Scott Lawrence. We'll see how he reacts to that. But I am picking ATL. As if I haven't said that enough, I'll say it again.
Dan,
I'm actually going to go ATL as well, and it's funny that Brian says
because you're picking the Free Jacks.
Sure, why not, Brian? Okay. I'll just lay down under the bus. You don't have to throw me there. I'll just lay down. I'll take it. I think the smaller field actually plays into ATL's advantage with their defense, how aggressive their defense is. It's going to make it really hard for Seattle. They won't have the width outside, which is where usually that defense is vulnerable. If you can get out into that outside 13 channel, is where you can do some damage. If you can get there, smaller field, there's not going to be a lot of space. And no Matt Turner, I think you lose that creativity at the back for Seattle. It could be a tough one for the Seawolves here. I did hear, though, that Yamada is en route.
What about your father?
No, he got a case of gout, so he's out this weekend. He's up on the exotic foods, Dad. He'll be okay. But Yamada, not the father, he's back.
I think the youth of Atlanta will serve them well on this long road trip because, it's not going to matter to them as much as some older guys. So I think that and Turner being out is a big component for Seattle. So I'm going to pick Atlanta. I'm sorry, Adrian Balfour. You can't pick every team each week, everybody, right? So you got to pick somebody. That's the whole thing here. So I'm going with Atlanta in this one. All right, fellas, final thoughts.
Man, we're heading into the second half of the season, which is crazy to think about. It seems like it just started, but
yeah,
man, every game from here on out is super exciting. So, I'm pumped. And hey, no cancellations. Every game has been a go so far. So, we said that going into the season, we were a little bit worried about that. So far, so good. So fingers crossed we get to the rest of the way. Looking forward to it, and go Arrows.
Dan, who's going to win the East?
That's a great question, Matthew. And I don't have an answer for you. If I had to put my money on it, and this is not my heart speaking, okay, or this is just financially speaking, so I don't get mad at me, I would put my money on Toronto.
Wow.
That's just with the players they have, the squad they have, and what it takes to kind of come out of that conference. I think they've got the depth, and they've kind of got the history and the experience there to get through the tough times. So I will go. I think Toronto will take the number 1 seed. Number 2, you could give me anyone. They're all good enough to make it. But I think Toronto will run away with the East.
Brian, he's putting his toonies where his mouth is.
I like this Dan fella. He can come and visit me up in my igloo here anytime.
On that note, we warmed up everybody out there with this show, but it is time to conclude and come to an end. I want to thank Mr. Bryan Ray of America's Rugby News and Dan Power, the voice of Major League Rugby. I'm Matt McCarthy on behalf of these gentlemen. And please, ladies and gentlemen, check out our other segments, including our Major League Rugby show, our Global Rugby Recap, What Are the Odds?, our Major League Rugby Sports Bet show with the Philly Godfather, John Bradshaw Layfield, the WWE legend, and Gifty Bailu, martial law, the Zack Attack. And please sign up for our American Red Cross Rugby Wrap-Up Blood Donor Team.